our meeting to order. It's 6 o'clock. We'll open the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we'll open starting with our council activity reports. I didn't have any meetings that I attended, although we did open the Ampey Park shelter. We had a brief ceremony and ribbon cutting out there. That seemed to go well. Picture was in the paper last week. Thanks to the construction crew and the Parks Department for, I think, putting together a great shelter that is going to be a real benefit to the community. But that's all I've got for activities, other than attending the Town and Country Days, and I think that was a huge success. Donna, you can differ, I guess, when we get to your report. No, I thought it was one of the best parades we've had in years, and I liked the band. I thought it all went over really well. So that's all I've got. Paul?
I was joint planning board up at the Township Hall. We discussed, I think it was 5 building plats that are in the process of being platted, and we're just jumping through all the legal stuff to make it happen.
Neil?
I was at the ribbon cutting for the new shelter in Ampey Park. Very nice facility. Town and Country Day activities. I was disappointed on the Shriners. I don't know what happened there, but that would have been a nice addition.
It's Donna's fault.
And I missed the Green Roof meeting. I was at the dentist. That didn't go good.
Uh-oh. All right, Donna?
Okay, I attended the budget and finance meeting and Town and Country Days. There's kids' night. I missed the parade because I was at the pork chop stand working. Yeah, raffle. It's a good time. Good turnout.
It was. Megan?
Hello. Excuse me for my tardiness.
No.
Well, if everybody except Sean, excuse me. That's been kind of a busy afternoon at the Brick household.
It's all good.
Oh, let's see. Yeah, no. Lodging tax meeting?
Yep.
Okay. So, I attended a lodging tax meeting, where we discussed different marketing strategies for Paynesville and looked at a couple different logos there. So I think that's gonna be kind of interesting. They had some really good options for us. I think we're gonna go more into depth with that later. We also discussed some upcoming grants and social media campaigns. And then I had the ad hoc library board, where we discussed the choice of an architect, which we'll get into later, I believe. And just some basic visioning for the library, and that was about it for that meeting. And that was about it for me, besides the various Town and Country Days celebrations as well.
All right. Dan, how are things in Public Works?
Got the purchase agreement for the CNS towing building, working on getting that to Craig so he can review it and get that going and back to you guys. Setting up a meeting with the Friends of the Airport, or whatever they're called, and fire department and the city, so we can all get together before that event and get all our items in a row. Bought a truck today, and working on a whole bunch of other things.
Is that one of the snowplow trucks we talked about at the last meeting?
Bought a snowplow truck from State Department in St. Cloud. $12,000 for a 2006 Sterling single axle.
I can live with
Plow
that.
wing and a belly blade.
Okay.
Nice truck.
Under budget.
Under budget, so we'll take that. I understand next year if we do Town and Country Days on a holiday, we should probably plan it a little bit better.
We should have a meeting before the event like we're gonna do for this coming event.
Yeah. So, I'm not laying blame on anyone, I'm just saying. I realized, I think on Tuesday, that the parade was going to fall on a holiday, and I thought, oh, I wonder if that's going to complicate things at all, so. I think Jason got it all pretty much squared away, so,
A little bit of challenge, but it was all right.
good. All right, Tarek.
All right, yeah, Donna mentioned budget and finance. We did have a budget and finance, an internal meeting as well to kind of refine some of the numbers and try to reduce some of the budget items, which we did, and we'll be presenting them at the next meeting for the other members to review. Megan mentioned we had a lodging tax meeting, when we were discussing, there's a marketing company that was brought on board to come up with logos for us from a tourism perspective. So they presented us with 2 different logos, both that we thought were very good, and I think we're gonna narrow it down and choose one, and that will be not the logo for Painesville, but more like the logo for tourism in the area that we'll be using. So I'm pretty excited about that one. Library board as well, I attended that, and we'll be discussing more today. As for the Ampey Park shelter, I was there, but I also want to let everybody know that when they do go to the shelter, please check out who our sponsors and supporters were, because we did have a lot of help from the community and the greater community, which, we're all very appreciative of. Joint planning with Paul, we discussed platting of some of the lots in the township right along the golf course, so we'll be hearing more about that. And then there are 2 separate meetings with DEED, which is the Department of Employment and Economic Development, with 2 of the companies in town about their expansion plans. This is obviously very positive. They both want to expand and hire because they're doing very well. And finally, we are getting a $2,500 grant from CenterPoint Energy to help cover the cost of the new library door we're looking to install. So this is also very positive.
Any questions for Tarek? On the EDAP stuff, we had talked about, if need be, lending money from the city's EDAP fund to the loan fund. Have we looked into that at all?
No, I have not.
Okay. All right, then moving on to the open forum. Jessica, I'm guessing you're not here for our open forum?
I mean, we can take care of it now if you'd rather.
We've got a little time to kill. No, all right, moving on then to the adoption of the consent agenda or approval of the consent agenda. Minutes on page 1 of our original agenda. Vouchers on page 1 of the update totaling $414,306.86. Accepting the bids on the trucks from the Public Works Department. And then a couple of resignations. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, or does anybody want something pulled?
I'll make motion to approve.
Motion by Hersberg, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Thielen. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. All right. Tarek, on the architect selection and funding for the library.
As you know, and Megan can shed some more light on this because she attended the meeting that I didn't, but we initially, this was months ago, brought on 2 architectural firms to kind of, get their perspective and get their estimates of what it would cost. We found them to be quite high, so the board recommended that we go out and seek other bids for the library project just from the architectural point of view and design. So the members of the board contacted 2 more firms, as you can see on the agenda today, one of which is Woodseth, and one of that they narrowed it down to is HMA, I believe they're called, out of St. Cloud. And they recommended that we go with Woodseth because not only they were lower, but they felt more comfortable that they had quite a bit of experience on libraries, especially in communities like ours. So did I miss anything on that one, Megan?
I don't believe so. I'm just gonna go back and check the minutes, but, we felt that that was the best choice, and they're very, they have a very well-rounded approach to their projects. They have grant writers on staff, and things like that. They have a lot of contacts where we felt like it would be a lot more bang for our buck, so to speak, and that we would be able to, instead of having to individually contract out a lot of things, we would just be able to work with them. We just felt more comfortable with their understanding of what we were looking for as far as for the community and just the library itself, and they really got, what that was, and we really liked their vision for the library. Let's
line for this? Mm-hmm. Can I go ahead?
Go ahead, Paul.
Okay, sure. In earlier sober, it was noted that the city's library fund is currently depleted due to the recent purchase of the Gilmore lot. And that was about $50,000.
Yep.
And the way I see it, before we move ahead, I would like to get some more concrete numbers from, what was it, Pat Hansen's, from Friends of the Library and the Painesville Area Foundation. I would like to get a firmer number on what they're willing to contribute.
Hold on just a second, I probably have that. So what was discussed for hiring him? Hold on. I have a lot of library meetings in here.
1/3.
Yes, so, split 3 ways, they were looking at that, it would be $5,167 apiece.
Right.
Right, but Paul's asking,
So what they would be able to contribute as a whole, like, once we,
Oh, for the building and everything.
because I don't know that I mean, I guess we could maybe ask a number from them as to what they have that they're willing to contribute, but I think until the architect is hired and we get a firm number on what we need and what we're looking for, it might be harder to come by those numbers.
right, but I think what Paul and what I would like to know, and I've asked 4 or 5 times, how much money is earmarked for the library in the foundation account?
Okay,
Right, like the money that was raised at the gala a couple of years ago
Correct.
was specific.
That was earmarked for the library.
okay,
And that money should be available when we need it.
yeah,
Like now.
I mean,
this minute,
the 5,000 for the city, we didn't budget for that.
right,
And where's that coming from? If we do proceed with this.
Well, we didn't budget for the lot either, but we had an opportunity and we got it.
yeah. So, and I wanted to look at, and I didn't, before this, what is our usual contribution every year to the library? Do we,
We upped it last year to 15, if I recall.
okay,
Yeah, it's not that much.
yeah,
It was nothing just a few years ago.
right. So, yeah, nothing to 15 is not bad. So I don't know if going forward, if it's a situation where if we decide that this is the best thing that we need to do, if, you know, we can look at borrowing it against next year's contribution, or
Well,
what
I'm
we want to
not,
do there.
I'm
But,
not against the 15,000 as
Right.
the architect, but here's the bottom line.
okay,
And I imagine the drawing and everything would be good for 10 years. But unless we get funding for this library, it's still a dream.
right. And
So I
I,
think a concrete number would be a lot easier to work with.
I mean, I'm not against the library.
No, I'm not either.
And we've had people how committed as the council, I think we're very committed. We now have the land and we're proceeding, but the end of the line, the money has to be there, and we aren't gonna, with the liquor store and everything going down, there's,
right, well, and what's been
we have to
difficult.
get a big grant or something to
Yeah.
get this accomplished.
Well, and what's been difficult in the past is that a lot of the grants or the, you know, really low interest loans that we've looked at are very dependent on these steps, you know? So it's like we haven't been, there's one that we could have applied for, but it's like we haven't been able to do that because at that time we hadn't purchased the lot. So
Right,
until we
that's why we
have,
bought the lot,
Yeah.
because that's,
so now we have that, and then there's
Right.
other things where it's like they're kind of asking, how far are you along in the process? You know, do you have an architect? Do you have a, you know? So it's kind of, it's been a kind of a catch-22 that way. So, do we want to come back to this when we have a better number from the foundation? Or what are you guys thinking?
and does the Friends of the Library, what kind of money do they have for this type of thing? I mean,
Well, I know, I mean, we pretty much, we didn't discuss the entire fund as to building the library. What we discussed was the architect. So I know that they have, you know, they're ready and willing to pony up their third. So we can probably talk to Pat and see what we've got.
and
Going forward.
supposedly, there's other commitments. If things go
Yeah,
their way, there could be additional money coming in, which is very far out in space for,
One thing we have to keep in mind too is that there's a 45-day window on here for that number to be honored.
a year from now, it'll be higher, of course.
Right.
I mean, I'm not against it, but
So I guess what I'm thinking here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if we could get firm numbers from the Friends of the Library and the Painesville Area Foundation, it'd still be within that 45-day window, then I think if the numbers line up, then we're ready to go. But I would rather act more cautiously.
45, the day window to answer the,
It's in May, the letter's dated.
The letter, which is May 20th, so whatever that comes out to.
so will we be able to come back to council and vote on that, though?
If it's within that timeframe,
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
Because I remember it was a question as to even whether this one was going to be.
unless Woodseth, would, be willing to push that out another 15 to 30 days.
Our next council meeting is July 14,
Yeah.
so this would not make it.
Yeah, that's true. Would anyone be willing to, contact Woodseth to see if they could move it out?
Well, then if we don't vote on it today, we still miss that window. If they
Because is
say
their
no, we'll
quote
have to
gonna change
reprice
that
it.
much?
Yeah. What, Donna?
Is their quote gonna change that much?
Can't
Is it,
imagine it would.
you know, like,
I
don't think
can't
it's-
either. I think the only issue would be if, you know, they're suddenly swamped with projects, but I don't know why they would be.
I think my bigger concern would be if I were Woodseth, is that if they get oh, hey, can you give us more time? Now are they looking at, do we want to work with the city, or are they just putzing
Yeah.
around and don't know what they're doing yet? I echo Neil and Paul's concerns about needing to know what monies are available out there. I would desperately love to have an update from the foundation.
Okay?
I would be curious to know why the foundation can't pick up the cost of the totality of this expense, or at least 2/3 of it, given the money that's there already. And there might be very good reasons, so I'm just curious. But I think, you know, the city has committed to doing this, $5,200. And then that's gonna mean that the library capital improvement fund has a negative balance until that transfer is made, which leaves even less money for the new build down the road. But I'd be in favor of moving forward today, with the hope that we can get updated information by our next council meeting.
I'm sure that we can, and I do think that, you know, as Neil was saying, as we're all kind of dancing around more or less, that there's been a lot of question as to the city's commitment, which I'm not sure why, because then I talk about, well, we bought the lot. You know, we wouldn't have bought it if it weren't for that, but I just think that if, you know, I think that it would go some way towards unlocking some of those other funds if we did show that we were in it as far as purchasing this or hiring this architect, but my one vote, and what do you guys think?
Make a motion.
Yeah, I'm willing to entertain a motion unless there's more to be said.
this, going ahead with the architect's study definitely locks us in on this property. And I know there has been a little discussion that with our plans for downtown, it could still possibly be built downtown where the corner drug buildings are. And if we go ahead with this architect study, it eliminates that possibility. Are we,
I mean, yeah, depending on
is that?
how far the architect gets into it, I guess, but I just, I think that, you know, I hear what you're saying, and I do like that location as well, but I just think there are so many ifs, you know, if we can get a grant to demolish it, if we can get this, there's no parking, there's no, you know, and it's like we've made this much progress on the site we have planned already. I think we should just go for it instead of banking too much on something that might happen.
I just hate to make the wrong choice and
I know,
10
but,
years from now I'll bite myself.
yeah, But if, I don't know, squirrels that stay in the middle of the road get run over. If we don't make a choice, eventually it's gonna, that is the choice. We didn't make one, and then I don't want to see opportunities go by because we thought something better might come along and then it doesn't. But yeah, I know what you're saying, and I know it's a possibility that some of the things we could get for demolition might be tied into what we could put there. But I think that if those opportunities do arise, I feel like we can put our heads together and come up with something that would also fall under that criteria.
Even if we move the location, I would think Widseth would be able to amend their plans for, I mean, maybe a little bit of extra money, but at least by that point, they would have done all of the interviews with the stakeholders to get an idea of what we're looking for,
Yeah,
so.
true.
At this point, I think we need to move forward to keep this project rolling, or we're gonna have people completely losing interest in backing out.
Yeah, which, I understand too, as this has been years and years in the making and a lot of people working very hard, so, which doesn't, obviously we still have to make the right decision, but, so I guess, looking for a motion?
One thing that I
Yep, Paul?
was hoping that the Friends of the Librarian and the Area Foundation is exactly, how much are they expecting the city to pay for this? That number has not come around yet.
Well, we don't know because we don't,
I'm talking about percentages. Do they want to go thirds on this? Do they want the city to come up with 75% of this and then they do it? I think we need to work on the numbers a little bit harder before we can go ahead and commit to it.
well, I mean, I think that it would depend, if for some reason something happens and it becomes an extreme, or something is found and it becomes an extremely expensive build that can't be covered by the, grants or the loans or whatever PACF has earmarked, then that would be a different conversation. But if it comes in where it's expected to be, I don't know,
Is that a motion?
No. Hold on.
Anybody willing to make a motion?
I am, but my phone went away because people are talking. I'll move to hire Widseth as the library architect in the amount of $15,500 to be split equally between the Friends of the Library, Painesville Area Foundation, and the City of Painesville, with the city's total being $5,166.66.
The motion by Brick is stated on the action sheet. Is there a second?
Do you want me to add anything about it coming out of the,
Capital Improvement Fund?
yes.
So motion by Brick is stated on the action sheet with funds coming out of capital improvement. With that, is there a second? I'll second just so we can discuss further because I'm hearing some noises to my right. Neil?
I'd been a little happier tonight if some representation from the foundation and friends would have been here.
I will
I know
totally
you're,
own that as being my fault because they it was questioned at the thing and it was kind of going to be hard with people's schedules, but people did say they tried to make it. And I was kind of like, I can just make the pitch. But yeah,
You did say that.
I did say that, that's my fault. So they would have been here. And I'm sure if we wanted to, ever call a special meeting or get some more information, that there are some that would be more than.
well,
happy to
and
be
this
here.
is step 1 of 50, so.
Yes,
There'll be
yes, it
plenty
is.
of time to,
Well, depending on what you look at, it's probably step 105 out of 6,000, but,
This is a deck chair on the Titanic.
yeah. I know it's, it's frustrating because it does feel like it's moving so slowly, or we're having to, do things that we don't want to do or that we're not sure of, but it's also kind of like if we don't make any steps, then it's not going to go anywhere. We're going to have to read.
what was the figure we put in the library CPI?
15,000.
15.
Yes.
And that was just to bring it back to zero, wasn't it?
Yep. But it is zero because we spent 50 on the lot.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, because between the lot and the door, it was negative. So we brought it back to zero, but now we're getting 2,500 for a
For
grant.
the door, yep.
So this is effectively just bringing it to -3.
Yeah, approximately.
I'm ready to vote.
How long, when is the next library board meeting?
It will be in July. Is it, yeah. it's
Yes,
before-
July 10th.
before
So
the-
if our next council meeting is the 14th, do we think we could have answers on the funding questions that we've asked tonight by the 14th?
We will ask.
Yes, I'm confident on that.
All right. Any other discussion? Calling the question, all in favor of the motion. Again, the motion is as stated on the action sheet with the addition that funds come out of capital improvement. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Motion does carry 4-1. All right, on the liquor store finance plan, Jessica. We have Jessica Green here from Northland Securities. She will lead us through the bonding process.
Mr. Mayor, council, good evening. So I'll apologize in advance, as you're going to hear this twice, as we're going to discuss this at your EDA meeting in about an hour or so. But you do have a finance plan in your packet this evening. We're not looking for any action on the finance plan. This is more for a review for the council, as the finance plan does assume that the EDA will be the issuer of the bonds. However, based on the way that the EDA is set up, the enabling resolution, it does require that council concur with the action of the EDA to issue bonds. So therefore, we're here tonight to kind of go through this finance plan with you, of course, answer any questions that you may have. And like I said, we'll go through this again at the public hearing that we're scheduled to have at 7:15 this evening. So the finance plan itself covers the Economic Development Authority's issuance of $1,815,000 in public project lease revenue bonds. This will be considered Series 2025A. And it's a lease with option to purchase. And we are scheduled currently for the sale of the bonds to occur in late July. I believe that's July 28th. So I'll go through the executive summary, and it's listed as page 1 of that finance plan. It's actually 3 pages in. But again, of course, the purpose here for the bonds is to finance the construction and equipping of a new liquor store for the city. The EDA would then pledge lease payments received from the city to the payment of the bonds. We are anticipating, of course, that revenues from the liquor store would cancel any ability or necessity, from the city to contribute to those lease payments. However, if the revenues from the liquor store are not sufficient to cover the debt service payment, the city would then be required to make the payment over to the EDA to make sure that they have enough funds to make that debt service payment. We have a 30-year structure. It comes down to about 29 years in total. The bonds do need to be paid by statute within 30 years of the issuance date of the bonds, the closing date of the bonds, which would then mean, of course, that you've got 29 principal payments in there. The bonds would mature annually each December 15th in the years 27 through 2054. And then interest would begin being payable on June 15th of 2026 and then semi-annually thereafter. So very similar structure to kind of how your bonds are structured for the city. So paying interest twice a year and principal once a year. Your estimated interest rate here is about 5.17%. Prepayment option, we do have the ability to call the bonds in, whether that's in whole or in part, for savings, refinance, et cetera, beginning December 15th of 2034. The bonds will be subject to extraordinary redemption and prior payment at the option of the EDA in whole at the principal amounts thereof, plus the accrued interest on any date in the event of damage or destruction of the property. And that's typical sort of standard language for any sort of catastrophic events that could occur. The bonds will be rated by Standard & Poor's. We have reached out to Standard & Poor's for that rating, and I believe that we landed on July 9th as for the rating discussion, so we'll have that back probably about a week later. The bonds will be considered tax exempt, and they will be considered bank qualified. We do have certain risk factors, of course, with the issuance of any debt, so we've listed those in your finance plan if you're curious to take a look at those. What we're looking at here is a negotiated sale, so Northland would purchase the bonds directly from the city. Pricing date here, Monday, July 28th, 2025. So we'd do that in the morning where we would sell the bonds, and then we'd come back before the EDA and the council that evening. So we'd have the EDA considering their resolution at about 5:15. And then city council approval. And actually, I'm going to stop there. Jennifer and I spoke about this, and we can talk more about this at the EDA meeting.
We don't think that you're going to need 45 minutes to consider the bids for those bonds. So what Jennifer and I had discussed is maybe scheduling that for 5:45. Because again, unless something sort of wild is happening with the market, it's a pretty short discussion. So unless council feels differently, we'd move that up to 5:45, just so we're not making you sit here for an extra half an hour or so. And then after that, assuming that the EDA awards the bonds, then we'd have city council consider the approval and concurrence with the EDA action. And then from there, we've got just some general information related to kind of how the bonds are structured, and this is included in that finance plan. So you've got your sources and uses of funds. What we understand of the project amount is about 1.6 million, so that's your deposit to construction fund. With these types of lease revenue bonds, it does require that there's a debt service reserve fund set up, so we fund that within the bond issue itself. That's why we're kind of getting to that $1.8 million number. That amount of money is held by the trustee, and then that's used to make the last payment on the bonds. You've got cost of issuance here about $47,000, underwriter's discount about $40,000, and then you have a rounding amount of about $3,000. That rounding amount is included because bonds are issued in $5,000 denominations. So you receive that back at closing, and then you can use that to offset your first principal or interest payment. So the authority here is 475 and 469. 475 covers the general borrowing authority for cities here in Minnesota, and then 469 speaks to the ability to utilize the EDA powers. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the public hearing at the EDA meeting next. So again, bonds being structured here over 29 years. It's a 30-year term for the bonds. And then we get into the lease payments, the debt service reserve fund, et cetera. So there's some detail there if you want to get into any of that. And then the issuing process. So we have a resolution to establish an economic development district. So that may sound somewhat familiar to the city as you've done TIF districts in the past. This isn't the same as that, but some of that process is the same, that we do need to hold a public hearing, take any sort of input from the community. The economic development area is not approving the sale of bonds. It's approving essentially the use of that land for that particular type of project. So of course here, the construction and operation of a liquor store. From there would be a ground lease between the EDA and the city, because the city owns the land, so the city needs to lease the land to the EDA, and then the EDA leases it back to the city. And then there's a lease agreement that basically describes the relationship between the EDA and the city in terms of the bond issue, debt service payments, et cetera. There's an indenture of trust, there's an EDA bond resolution, and then of course the city council resolution that would concur with the findings of the EDA. Bond counsel here is Taft. Taft has served as bond counsel for the city on numerous occasions. And then Bond Trust Services will serve as paying agent and trustee for the issue. From there, we have the debt service schedule, or the preliminary debt service schedule, I should say. We won't know exactly what that rate is until we actually sell the bonds in late July. And then, of course, those related considerations related to bank qualification, arbitrage, et cetera, are found on page 6. Premium. So this has been, we've seen premium bids in the past, gosh, I want to say probably 6 or 7 years now. Premium is what happens when investors are looking for a higher rate on the bonds. So they're willing to give you cash at the time of issuance and in return get that higher interest rate. So I bring that up because certainly don't want the council to be surprised when we likely come back with a lower issuance amount, because with that cash, we're going to reduce the amount of borrowing for the EDA. And then from there, again, there's a note on the rating, which we have scheduled that call with staff and with S&P. And then finally, we've got the calendar of events at the very, very tail end of this finance plan. So of course, we're here this evening to have the council review the finance plan, and then also for the EDA public hearing to occur at 7:15 this evening. We will, of course, complete that rating call. There's a number of things kind of happening in the background related to all of the documents that are associated with the issuance of the bonds and the lease documents. And then again, finally on June 28th, we would then do the bond pricing. And you would then have proceeds in hand on August 28th to complete the project. Now, if there's anything kind of happening with the project in the interim before you get proceeds, you can certainly use cash on hand to pay those costs and then reimburse yourselves afterwards. We just want to make sure that you get a reimbursement resolution on file before you have any sort of hard costs with construction. Any sort of planning documents related to sort of design, et cetera, those are all kind of considered sort of preliminary expenditures, so you don't need a reimbursement resolution for that. But if you do start spending money with the contractor, we'll want to get a resolution in place. With that, I will pause there for any questions that the council may have.
I have a question.
Sure?
What is our expected rating to be, and if it comes in a little bit higher, a little bit lower, what's the effect on interest rate?
Yeah, so currently we are estimating that the rate would be about 5.17%, so that's what's included in the executive summary here. We do have, excuse me for just 1 second, we've got 25 basis points built in to provide a little bit of a cushion there. So of course, if the rate comes in lower, then we'd have a reduction in interest rate. I'd need to run the numbers specifically if you want to see something that's 25 basis points cheaper or more expensive, and I can get those schedules to you tomorrow.
Okay, yeah.
So we're working on some grants as well
Okay?
that could affect the end project, and hopefully will be less than the 1.6.
Okay,
We've already cut some costs, but
sure.
it's awful early.
Okay, so to that end, we need to know approximately 2 weeks prior to the sale what that final number is going to be. So if you do have a better idea, if we've sort of whittled some things down, I know when we talked previously, when we settled on that 1.6, I think you were waiting on just a couple of the smaller contracts or bids to come in. So if that number has changed at all, just let me know.
Okay.
Yep.
I have a few questions, and you can tell me if you want to answer them now or if it's best for our public meeting later tonight. Will this affect the city's bond rating for all of our other things if we do an infrastructure project in the future?
No. So you will see that the rating is going to be different on lease revenue bonds than it would be for your typical sort of standard general obligation bonds. And that's because of the fact that there is no general obligation pledge for lease revenue bonds. They are subject to annual appropriation. So you'll likely see a notch of 1 to 2 below what your typical general obligation rating is. But as far as the overall rating and sort of the pressure that it puts on the city, we are anticipating that the revenues from the liquor store will be sufficient to cash flow the debt service on the bonds. So from that perspective, if we were to look, 3-4 years into the future, and if the city is consistently sort of subsidizing that payment, then that may put some pressure on the city's rating. But if those liquor store revenues are sufficient, then I would not see any reason that there would be a reduction or an impact to your rating.
So I think that answers a later question I had, which is we're estimating these will be rated at about a AA-, is that right?
So currently, we're looking at an A+ rate, and again, that accounts for that differential between the city's GO rating and what your lease revenue rating would be. We won't know exactly kind of where S&P is going to sort of put the rating exactly. Typically, we see a 1 to 2 notch reduction from your standard general obligation rating.
Bill, do you want to talk? Well, am I looking at this sort of amortization schedule correctly, that our service to it is going to be about 123,000 annually?
Correct.
Bill, do you want to talk about how we're going to make those numbers?
Well, as we did the projections,
I know, and I'm asking you to go through it again.
yeah, I'd be
I'm just saying for the record, I know that we've done it.
Yeah,
It's sort of ad nauseum at this point, but. if
You know,
wouldn't mind.
we worked with MMBA. We had them come out. Brenda Viziak, who ran Lakeville, she's built 7 stores. Actually, she's at, MMBA hires her as a contract labor now to go out and help stores that are struggling. So she's one of the best in the business. Did a ton of work for Lakeville. Came out, worked with Belinda and myself on, our budget to see if we could originally afford to even do this. And we did traffic surveys, We've looked at what the traffic counts were. Last survey, it was 2019, so we know it's greater next to that Quick Trip exit. Just by the bypass being done, the traffic amount has picked up. So hopefully, that's where a majority of our new customers will come from.
Why don't you give them the numbers, what you came up with, what you just told me?
The customer count at Richmond in 2019 was 7,200 people going through Richmond. Now it's up to 10,000 after 22. That was the last survey done there. New London in 2018 had 7,300 people a day going that way. Now it's up to 95, 71 as of 2024. That's with the bypass being done. The last survey done here in town, there's 950 cars coming off Veterans Drive exit. That was 2019. Coming from the C-store industry, truck stop industry, Quick Trip wouldn't have built here if that traffic count wasn't, they knew it was going to pick up when that bypass was done. That's just smart business. So we brought Brenda in, looked at our store, looked at the property. I said, what do we need to do? You need more space. How can we get those revenues? Well, we can't build extra revenues in the space we're at because we've maxed out that size. Expenses are creeping up faster than the revenues. So we sat down and started working on a budget, and she said to go 25 to 30% increase is what she saw in the average stores that built near 4-lane highways. I went at 20%, and then increased 5% each year because normally we increase every year 4 to 5% normally. So the first year or two is going to take a bit. That's why we want to purchase a big sign. But by year 3, be year 2 now, revenue should be $132,000 conservatively. That's conservatively at 20%. The next year's $151,000 by increasing our sales. So giving that extra space will help tremendously. It'll make things more shoppable. The displays we have now are on the floor. I mean, it'd be more professional. And we've done a lot of things. This project, we didn't do a lot of bells and whistles. We put the money where we can make money at. That's in the cooler, a sign, and nice shelving. The building's not a fancy building. It's not brick and mortar. It's not. It was $1 million, a pretty basic building, but it looks nice and with a parking lot. And you're right in the best area of town that you can be. That was in a property that's been sitting there since the bypass was done, and nobody's offered to purchase that land. With the traffic going into Quick Trip every day at lunch, just with meeting with the people down there, the sign people, and going down, talking to the construction guys who've been down there twice, the amount of traffic going in and out is pretty amazing. And something else to consider, right now when they come to our store, our summer traffic, the husband comes into the liquor store, the wife goes to the store. Well, now they're both going to have to come into the liquor store. That should help enhance sales. So there's a lot more positives. Everybody wants me to be the cheapest around. Well, to do that, I've got to be able to buy, and right now I'm stacking beer 25 cases high. So.
Don't advertise that.
Yeah, so, well, we have to, otherwise we can't do the buys. And so that will help the profit margin. We've already seen it go up this year. Labor is going to be cut, part of this will be cut by $30,000 is labor, because right now I'm paying somebody 7 to 8 hours a day to move product in that back room to make room for the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day, and the next day. Every day we're moving product. This way the product's going to be on the shelves. There still will be some stocking, yes, but we can adjust our schedule to have staff when you're needed during the busy times, and I can run the day shift a lot of days by myself. And that's where we'll save it. Chris and I can run some days, me opening, her closing. So that we've already started streamlining our staffing. Because last year, we were over budget $30,000. So, John, I don't know how much further you want me to go. We've had MMB look at the numbers. Candace Woods, who helped me when I started here, we visited, you know, she runs Hutchinson, top unit. So I know the big question is, where's all this traffic going to come from? Well, hopefully people will stay home, because we're going to have those products that they're looking for. Right now, I've got 2 new bourbons that came in today. I don't know where I'm going to put them. We got bourbon here, 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 and here. So,
The CBD market's only expanding and
THC market's expanding. There's, legislatively, we're working on a lot of things at the Capitol. We have room to add on if we ever want to add on to the side for another business. That's a possibility. You know, right now I haven't concentrated on that at all because I wanted to make sure this part was done correctly. So, we've been talking about this for 10 years. It's a strategic plan that we had last year. This is the #1 priority. And I mean, you can see in our profits the last few years, you can just see them dropping. So how much more can we pull out of that? You know, we're doing $675 a square foot right now. Anything over $450, $490, you want to be looking to expand in retail.
So just to recap, you crunched the numbers, you called in some experts from the MMBA,
Yep.
which is our liquor association. They brought people in, looked at your numbers. Based on what they've seen in other cities, a store expansion like this generally looks at between 25 to 30% increase in revenues and profits. Yes? Yes. So you did the math at 20% increase, so you underestimated, I'm not going to use that C word.
Yes.
You underestimated the growth at 20% instead of 25.
Correct.
And at that, you're looking at, by 2028, if I understood your timeline correctly, the liquor store would be profitable again.
Yes,
But until 2028, there's money in your capital improvement fund
yes,
that we could pull from to make that payment.
correct. You know, we're not going to dump $100,000 worth of inventory like the salesman think we're going to do right away. You know, you want to build that inventory up, you want to do smart buys, and you can build that up slowly. It's going to be nice to have the opportunity to have that room to do those and be more professional with our signage and our displays, that people can see things are on sale. That's what I'm excited about. So we're going to have that room to work with things. So not just a stack of beer here with a sign on it. You know. So the night I came home from MMB conference that Belinda and I came back for, that day I spent with both Brenda at length, and Reed, president of our liquor board, was there as well. And she went and talked to him and said, if you're crazy, this is going to work. And Brenda's pretty well known. And then Candace had a conversation with Reed as well. So, because I wanted to double check the numbers one more time before we did this. So, and that's been about 5 times since we started doing this with Brenda. So,
And your wife's an accountant.
well, not, yeah, she's a treasurer, yeah.
Right.
But she's ultra conservative. So.
how long has that piece of land been for sale for?
Before Quick Trip went up.
Yeah, because as far as, I mean, in my time, I can only recall one very low ball offer from a dollar store or something that was, I mean,
Dollar Tree.
yeah, beyond absurd. And then I think there was a counter offer and then we never heard from them again or something along those lines. So, I mean, it's been, I guess, you know, why not?
You know, I just know there's been some questions asked recently that TARC received about how this is going to be paid for, so I
Yep.
just wanted to make sure that we were
Good to have it
discussing
out
that. Yep.
No, anybody has a question, come talk to me. Come in our back room next week. You know, I don't mind taking people back there. It's, you know, this is what we live for every day. So, you know, in the cooler, all these drinks that are coming out, these canned cocktails, everybody wants them cold. They want their product cold. And, this cooler is just a 24-door cooler with a big beer cave. It's 15 by 88. It's huge. We're going to be able to have those products for those people cold, especially like last weekend. You know, we moved a lot of products last weekend. So even while I was on vacation. So,
And even just some of the frozen drinks and things, I remember people being so sad that they couldn't have them.
we
just
lost the freezer.
have- Yeah,
We didn't have room for the freezer.
right.
So,
I think it'll be
Does anybody else have questions for Jessica then? Otherwise, Jessica, if there's anything else you want us to know?
No, sir?
Okay, so you're not looking for any type of vote from us or the EDA tonight, is that right?
The EDA does have a resolution to establish that economic development district, but nothing from the council or the EDA related to the issuance of bonds this evening.
So the council will have to concur with the bonds at that July meeting.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you, Jessica. Talk to you in 30 minutes. Okay, there's no action then on that tonight. On to the firefighter wage increase. Tarek.
Well, we
Anything else
had,
we need to know about this?
well, we had a debate. We spoke quite a bit about it, given the budget situation, and what we said we would increase the firefighter wages. As you remember, we went from 16 with a proposal of going 18 and then 20. However, some members felt that it's long overdue, so let's just, accelerate the wage increase to the $20 an hour where we're looking to go. And yeah, I would say there was quite a bit of discussion on it, but members felt in the end that they want to get to that.
If memory serves, the 18 and then 20 was already an accelerated schedule from what Budget and Finance had initially proposed, right?
What they had initially discussed was 16, 18, and 20. I can't remember if there was anything accelerated beyond that or not. But the recommendation from the Budget and Finance is also saying that if we do accelerate it, we are not going to look at increasing it for another 2 years. So keep it steady for at least 2 years.
I guess I thought, in my head, I thought this was what it was that we were going to $20 next year.
I believe that was the initial, like Derek said. It's supposed to be, we went from like 10 to 16, 18, 20, a 3-year program. Some firefighters in here and the budget committee wanted to go 20, and I believe I said, well, let's compromise and make it 18. And I kind of agree. I thought we could wait another year to go to the 20, but a part of me, I see the big sign, we can't get firefighters, and tonight another one resigned. So maybe we do need the 20 if it makes the carrot a little bigger.
And part of the discussion that was had was for some of the firefighters that are working their day job or whatever their job is, and they're making more than what they would be on a fire call. They'll just
Right,
get
but
more
that's
stuff.
part of being a volunteer.
Well, yeah, I understand that.
I
I
mean,
mean, we can't, there might be somebody getting $50 an hour, we're not gonna give.
I know, yeah.
You know, that's,
All of
that's
us
kinda lame, but.
make more money than our per diem, you know,
Yep.
so. But it is what it is, but yeah, I think it's, I thought that too, that we were gonna go to 20 automatically, but.
The only reason I'm in favor of this, I guess, is because we are having a problem getting a full squad.
Yeah. And if it's gonna hold steady for the next few years,
So with that, I'll make the motion to approve the $20 starting January 1st of '26, and we can budget for it accordingly.
With the provision for no further increases until 28?
Correct.
Okay. So a motion by Hersberg is stated on the action sheet. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Brick. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. All right, election judge pay increase.
Similar situation, we did a review of the wages that we pay election judges, which is pretty low. We compared it to surrounding areas, and actually at the same time, I got a call from Cold Spring because they were looking at doing the same thing. Their wages were similar to ours. And they did elect to increase them. I can't remember how much though, probably the same, around 15. So we are recommending an increase to 15 an hour, which is in line with the surrounding communities.
And I'm just looking at this here, I'm assuming we don't need the provision that Eden Valley carries of 16 for a head judge, because Kristen is our head judge and she's already on staff.
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion, or I'd entertain a motion on this?
Well, this makes perfect sense, and the same scenario here, Paul, some of these people have jobs, they're getting 20 bucks an hour, and they're gonna take, but they are volunteering to do this also. But, 11.50 is ridiculous, 15 is minimal. So I'll make the motion to, increase from 11.50 to 15 effective January 1st, 26.
Motion by Hersberg is stated on the action sheet. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Potter. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. All right, on to the irrigation agreement. Dan?
Standard irrigation agreement with the local farmer. Many years that I could get him to sign up for. Recommend approval. I ran it through the lawyer, approved by the lawyer.
Yeah, this is pretty self-explanatory. We've been through this many times before.
We have indeed. I'd entertain a motion on it.
Motion to approve the irrigation agreement between the city of Painesville and Destined Ag LLC, Chad Reen.
Motion by Thielen is stated on the action sheet. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Hersberg. Any further discussion? All right, the one thing I would note, Dan, just as I'm flipping through here, the very last page says it was drafted by Bill Spooner. Going forward, we may want to have that updated, but I think technically he probably did draft it, so we're good.
Did draft it.
Yeah. So, calling the question, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries. All right. All right, on the vacation of the drainage agreements.
Yes, wait a second. This is for the AMPI lot, right, Chuck?
I'm looking at this as the liquor store.
Oh,
Liquor store.
yep, on the site, because it's two lots, there is an easement that goes through there, and we're just looking to vacate it.
No. Why can't we keep our easement on our own lot? All right, so we need to set a public hearing on the easement. We've got a proposal for July 28th, 2025 at 6:30. It's going to be a busy evening there, folks, but entertain a motion approving the resolution to set a public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Rick. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Potter. Any further discussion? Motion to approve resolution 2025-20. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. All right. Lot split for 890 South Street. We've got an update on this in,
Well, just more of a clarification. 890 South Street is a lot that we did a swap with last year, right by Ampey Park. And the reason we wanted this lot is so that as Ampey Park grows, we want to have another entrance or exit into the parking area. So that's the whole reason for this lot. We did swap the lot with the current resident at that time, and they've taken another lot. And now, the lot, we don't need all of the land there. So if we were to split it off and make some money by selling half of it, or, a little bit more than half, it still gives us plenty of room to build any type of entrance or exit as we'd have on the other side of the lot. So the proposal is that we keep 40 feet of the lot. The lot is 91 and a half feet wide. So we will keep 40 feet, and the remaining 51.5 feet will be sold to the resident next door with the agreement that they combine the lot with their existing lot.
Wasn't our agreed upon price negotiated for half of the lot?
We said slightly more than half. We wouldn't know until we see how much we need.
I just can't remember
So-
how we structured it.
Yeah, talking to Dan and Chuck and how much we need, and I think, Chuck, you even measured the existing one to see, to make it identical in size.
Yeah, the right-of-way for the existing entrance to the park is 40 feet wide, so even though the road's not quite that wide, but the right-of-way is 40 feet.
Yeah, so we made it the same, and whatever was remaining, that's what will be split off.
All right, I'd approve a motion to approve, or I'd entertain a motion to approve the administrative lot split. If anyone wants to make that.
I'll move to approve the administrative grant of lot split for the city of Painesville.
Motion by Brick, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Hersberg, any further discussion? Hearing none, call the question, and all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none, motion carries. All right, that is it, we've got our meeting schedules attached to the back for informational, our liquor store reports, along with our latest population estimates, where they're estimating we're at about 2,575 people, folks. We are a growing community.
That we are.
If I recall, our last one was under 2,500, yes?
2490 something, just under 2,500.
That.
Well, welcome.
It's all those houses we built up last year. Okay, and with that, our business meeting is adjourned. Our EDA meeting will start in 12 minutes.